The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but engineer Jiho barely noticed. His eyes were glued to the cascading data streams flowing across his monitors at Seoul's orbital monitoring station. Most nights were quiet up here, just the usual chatter from commercial ships and the occasional deep space probe checking in. But tonight felt different. The station hung in Earth's upper atmosphere like a giant metallic spider, its sensors reaching out into the void. Jiho had been working the night shift for 3 years now, and he knew every sound, every pattern, every normal blip that crossed his screens. What he was seeing now was definitely not normal. "What the hell?" he muttered, leaning closer to his primary display. A series of pulses was coming from somewhere beyond the outer rim of the solar system. The signal was weak, barely registering above background noise, but there was something about its rhythm that made his skin crawl. The pattern repeated every 47 seconds, not 46, not 48, exactly 47. Nature didn't work that precisely. This had to be artificial. Jiho's fingers flew across his keyboard, running the signal through every filter and analysis program in the station's database. The results made his blood run cold. Whatever was sending this signal was using technology that made Earth's most advanced systems look like stone tools. Minji. He called across the cramped control room. His colleague was hunched over her own station, probably tracking some routine asteroid that wouldn't come within 1,000,000 miles of Earth. "You need to see this." Minji looked up, her dark hair falling across her face. She'd been working double shifts all week, and the exhaustion showed in her eyes. "If this is another one of those weird radio bursts from the Crab Nebula, I swear I'll throw my coffee at you." "It's not from the Crab Nebula." Jiho's voice was tight with excitement and fear. "It's not from anywhere we've catalogued." And Minji, "It's getting weaker." That got her attention. She rolled her chair over to his workstation, bringing her own portable analysis unit with her. Minji was the best signal decoder on the station, maybe the best in the entire Earth Defense Network. If anyone could make sense of this, it was her. She plugged into his system and immediately saw what had him so spooked. The signal wasn't just artificial. It was complex. Layers upon layers of information packed into each pulse. Like someone had compressed an entire library into Morse code. "This is incredible," she whispered, her fingers dancing across her interface. "Look at this mutilation pattern. It's using quantum entanglement as a carrier wave. We can barely do that in our labs. And someone's broadcasting it across interstellar space." The signal pulsed again, but this time it was noticeably weaker. Whatever was sending it was either moving away from them at incredible speed or running out of power. Maybe both. "Can you decode any of it?" Jiho asked, watching the strength. "Me to drop another notch. I'm trying. But this is like trying to translate a language that uses mathematics we haven't invented yet." Minji's analysis programs were working overtime, breaking down the signal into component parts. "Wait, there's something here." A repeating sequence at the beginning of each transmission. She isolated the sequence and ran it through every translation protocol they had. Most came back as gibberish, but one program, designed to look for mathematical constants, started showing results. "Hi," Minji said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're broadcasting pi to 14 decimal places, then the golden ratio, then the speed of light in a vacuum." Jiho felt his heart hammering against his ribs. Universal constants. They're trying to establish that they're intelligent. Not just intelligent. Minji corrected, pointing to her screen. "Look at what comes after the constants. Coordinates. These are star charts." "Jiho, someone out there is telling us exactly where they are." The signal pulsed again, weaker than before, at this rate. They had maybe an hour before it faded into background noise forever. "We need to contact Earth Command," Jiho said, reaching for the emergency communication ray. "Wait." Minji grabbed his arm. "There's more. After the coordinates, there's another pattern. It's not mathematical this time." She isolated the final portion of the signal and played it through the speakers. What came out wasn't sound exactly, but their computers translated it into audio waves anyway. It was haunting, like a song played on instruments that didn't exist. But underneath the alien music, there was something else. Something that made both of them go very still. It sounded like screaming. "They're not just telling us where they are," Minji said, her face pale in the glow of the monitors. "They're asking for help." The signal pulsed one more time, fainter than ever. And then began its 47-second countdown to the next transmission. Each pulse brought them closer to losing this impossible contact forever. Jiho looked at Minji, seeing his own determination reflected in her eyes. Whatever was out there, whoever was crying out across the void, they weren't going to let that voice fade into silence. Not on their watch. The breakthrough came at 3 in the morning when Minji's quantum decoder finally cracked the alien transmission. What they found made their blood freeze. The message wasn't just a distress call. It was a death sentence countdown. "Jiho, look at this," Minji whispered, her voice shaking as the translation scrolled across her screen. "They call themselves the Kethra. Their star system is dying. Not in millions of years like most stars, but in 72 hours. The decoded message played through their speakers in broken, desperate fragments the computer had pieced together. Enough of their language to create a rough translation, and what it revealed was heartbreaking. "We are the last of 8 billion souls. Our sun burns too bright, too fast. The stellar engineers say we have 3 cycles before the great burning. We have sent this message to 400 worlds. None answer. Please, if you hear this, we are located at coordinates." The transmission included detailed star charts showing a system 1,200 light-years away. Jiho pulled up Earth's astronomical databases and found the star in question. It was a massive blue giant that had been burning far too hot for the past decade. A supernova. He breathed. "They're right. Look at these stellar readings from our deep space telescopes. That star is about to explode." Minji was already running calculations on her computer. 1,200 light-years. Even if we had faster-than-light travel, which we barely do, it would take our fastest experimental ships weeks to get there. "These people have 3 days. The alien message continued, growing more desperate with each repeated broadcast. The Kefra had tried everything. They'd sent massive generation ships toward other worlds, but those vessels would take centuries to reach safety. They'd built underground cities, but no shelter could survive a supernova. They'd even attempted to move their entire planet using gravity manipulators that could shift moons, but moving a world in 3 days was impossible even for their advanced technology. "Listen to this part," Minji said, highlighting another section of the decoded transmission. "They mention other species, the Zortui Empire, some group called the Crystal Hegemony, and something called the Iron Fleet Confederation. All of them received this same distress call." Jiho frowned. "Other alien civilizations. How many species are out there? Hundreds, according to this. Maybe thousands. And they're all part of something called the Galactic Council." Minji's fingers flew across her interface, pulling up more fragments of the alien database that had been embedded in their transmission. The Kethra sent their plea to every member species. Every single one responded the same way. The computer had managed to decode several response messages from other alien governments. Reading them made Jiho's stomach turn. The Zortui High Command regrets that the distance makes assistance impossible. The journey would require 63 standard cycles. We wish you peaceful passage to the next existence. The crystal hegemony acknowledges your distress. Our slowest vessels would require 47 rotations to reach your coordinates. We will remember your civilization in our archives. Iron Fleet Command has reviewed your request. Resource expenditure for such a rescue exceeds acceptable parameters. We honor your courage in the face of extinction. Message after message, all saying the same thing. Too far, too dangerous, too expensive, too difficult. The Kethro are going to die, and the galaxy's most powerful civilizations were just going to let it happen. There's more, Minji said, her voice barely audible. They sent us their entire cultural database, music, art, scientific discoveries, the history of their species going back 50,000 years. They want someone to remember them after they're gone. The weight of it hit Jiho like a physical blow. An entire civilization was about to vanish, and they'd chosen humanity, a species that couldn't even travel to other star systems regularly, to be their witnesses. Why us? He asked. Why send this to Earth? We're nobody out there. We've barely left our own solar system. Minji pulled up another fragment of the message. Because we're new, the Kethra intercepted some of our radio signals, our television broadcasts, our internet communications. They studied us for months before sending this message. Look what they say about us. The translation was rough, but the meaning was clear. The humans are young but passionate. They do not calculate acceptable losses as the older species do. They attempt impossible things because they do not know they're impossible. If any species in the galaxy would try to help the hopeless, it would be them. Jiho stared at the screen in amazement. They think we're crazy enough to actually try this. Are we? Minji asked. Before Jiho could answer, the alien transmission shifted. New data was coming through, broadcast on emergency frequencies. The Kethra's long-range sensors had detected the first signs of stellar collapse. Their sun was beginning to destabilize. Instead of 72 hours, they now had maybe 60. The message that followed was different from the others. Instead of a general distress call, this one was addressed specifically to Earth. Humans of the third planet, we have monitored your response frequencies. You are listening. You have not dismissed our play as impossible. In our final hours, we ask not for rescue, for we know it cannot be achieved. We ask only that you remember us. Remember the Kethra who loved, who built cities that touched the stars, who composed symphonies in quantum mathematics. Remember that we tried to live with honor, even as our world dies. The transmission included something else, something that made both engineers lean forward in amazement. Technical specifications for Kethra technology. Faster than light engines, gravity manipulators, energy shields that could deflect small asteroids. It was like receiving a graduate degree in physics from a civilization that had been exploring space. When humans were still discovering fire, they're giving us their technology. Minji whispered, everything they've learned in 50,000 years of space travel. They want us to have it. Jiho was already reaching for the emergency communication ray that would connect them directly to Earth Command. Like hell, we're just going to remember them. If they think humans are crazy enough to attempt the impossible, let's prove them right. The countdown continued, ticking away the final hours of an entire world. While two humans worked frantically to prove that impossible just meant no one had tried hard enough yet. The emergency klaxons were still blaring across Earth Command when Captain Soman burst through the doors of the crisis center. She'd been pulled from her bed at 4 in the morning, but the adrenaline coursing through her veins made her feel wide awake. The message from Seoul's orbital station had reached every major government on Earth within. Minutes, show me everything, she demanded. Not bothering with pleasantries, Admiral Chen, Earth's defense coordinator, looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past hour. We've got a dying alien civilization 1,200 light-years away, 60 hours until there. Star goes, supernova, every major galactic power has already written them off as impossible to save. Soman studied the holographic display showing the Kethra system. The numbers were brutal. Even their fastest experimental ships would take weeks to cover that distance, using conventional FTL drives. But something else caught her attention. What's this ship designation here? Phoenix 7. Our newest prototype, Admiral Chen said grimly. It uses a completely different FTL system. Instead of bending space gradually like other ships, it punches holes straight through reality. The theory says it could make the journey in 18 hours. Theory, the longest test flight was 6 hours. The ship came back with hull stress fractures and a navigation computer that needed complete replacement. Our engineers say attempting a 1,200 light-year jump could tear the ship apart. Captain Soman had been flying experimental spacecraft. For 15 years, she'd tested everything from atmospheric fighters to deep space explorers. The Phoenix 7 was different from anything humanity had ever built. While other species perfected safe, reliable FTL technology over thousands of years, humans had taken a typically reckless approach. I want to see the ship, she said. 20 minutes. Later, she stood in the hangar bay staring up at Phoenix 7. The vessel looked like someone had crossed a fighter jet with a deep space cruiser and added parts that shouldn't exist. Its hull was covered in strange geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. Those weren't decorations. They were reality anchors designed to keep the ship from getting lost between dimensions during FTL jumps. She's beautiful, Pilot Dongyan said, approaching from behind. He was already suited up in a flight harness, having been called in with the rest of the emergency crew, and completely insane. Dongyan had flown more test flights on experimental FTL drives than anyone else in the fleet. If anyone could handle Phoenix 7's unpredictable navigation systems, it was him. How insane? Soman asked. The drive literally tears a hole in space-time, scientist Hyun said, joining them at the ship's boarding ramp. She carried a tablet filled with technical specifications and looked both excited and terrified. Instead of gradually accelerating to faster-than-light speeds, we disappear from normal space entirely. We travel through something called null space, where physics work differently. Soman nodded slowly. And the other galactic species think we're crazy for trying this. They should, Hyun admitted. Their ships use gravity wells and space-folding technology that's been tested for millennia. Our approach is like trying to get somewhere by shooting yourself out of a cannon instead of taking the highway. Round them, the hangar buzzed with activity. Engineers were loading the ship with emergency supplies, medical equipment, and rescue pods designed to evacuate large numbers of people quickly. The Phoenix 7 had been designed as a research vessel, but its cargo bay could be converted to hold nearly 1,000 refugees if they removed all non-essential equipment. Captain. Admiral Chen's voice crackled over the intercom. We're getting responses from the Galactic Council. They want to speak with you directly. The main display screen flickered to life, showing a conference room filled with the strangest collection of beings Soman had ever seen. The Zoltri representative looked like a cross between a lizard and a praying mantis, while the crystal hegemony delegate appeared to be made of living gemstone. Most unsettling was the Iron Fleet Confederate, a mechanical being whose voice sounded like grinding metal. Human vessel, the Zoltri spoke first. Its words translated by advanced AI systems. We have reviewed your proposed rescue mission. The attempt is mathematically impossible and tactically unsound. You will die. The crystal being added, its voice like wind chimes in a storm. Your primitive FTL technology cannot survive such distances. We have calculated the probability of success at less than 0.01%. The Iron Fleet representatives read optical sensors focused on Soman. Resource expenditure exceeds acceptable parameters. 1 ship, 6 crew members advanced. Technology prototype. Total loss probability 99.7%. Recommendation: abort mission. Captain Soman looked at her crew. Dong-Yun was grinning like a maniac, the kind of expression pilots got when they were about to attempt something gloriously stupid. Haim was running final calculations on her tablet. Her fingers flying across the screen, the rest of the crew, engineers and medics who'd volunteered for what everyone knew was likely a suicide mission, stood ready. "You're probably right," Soman said to the alien council. "This is definitely going to kill us. But here's the thing about humans that you might not understand yet. We don't do things because they're safe or logical or mathematically sound. We do them because they need to be done." She gestured to the Phoenix 7. "You've all had FTL technology for thousands of years. You've perfected it, made it safe, reliable. Boring. We've had it for 20 years, and we're still crazy enough to punch holes in reality just to see what happens." The Zorthri's head tilted in what might have been confusion. "This approach lacks wisdom. Maybe," Soman admitted. "But wisdom never saved anybody from a supernova. Sometimes you need to be just stupid enough to try the impossible." She turned to her crew. "Everyone aboard. We've got 58 hours to prove that human stubbornness beats galactic common sense." As the Phoenix 7's engines began their startup sequence, energy crackling round the reality anchors built into its hull, the Galactic Council representatives watched in what could only be described as horrified. Fascination. The humans are actually attempting this, the crystal being observed. "Fascinating," the Iron Confederate added. "Perhaps we should monitor their progress for scientific purposes." But Captain Soman wasn't listening to the aliens anymore. She was strapped into her command chair, watching Dong-Yun's hands dance across the navigation controls while Haim monitored the exotic energy readings that would either carry them across the galaxy or scatter their atoms across 12 dimensions. "Ready for FTL jump," Dong-Yun announced. "Destination: impossible rescue mission. Punch it," Soman said. The Phoenix 7 disappeared from normal space in a flash of twisted light, leaving the Galactic Council staring at empty space and wondering if they'd just witnessed the bravest or stupidest act in galactic history. Probably both. The Phoenix 7 burst out of null space like a bullet fired from the void itself. Warning lights flashed across every surface as the ship's hull groaned under the stress of the impossible journey. They had made it, but just barely. Hull integrity at 60%. Haun called out, her voice tight with concern. "We've got microfractures on 3 decks and the navigation computer is completely fried." Captain Soman didn't care about the damage. Through the main viewport, she could see the Kethra home world. A blue-green marble hanging in space like a jewel about to be destroyed, but it was the star that made her breath catch in her throat. The Kethra sun was no longer yellow. It had swollen to nearly twice its normal size and glowed an angry red-orange. Solar flares stretched millions of miles into space, and the star's surface writhed like a living thing in agony. They had maybe 20 hours before it exploded and took everything in the system with it. "Jesus," Pilot Dong-Yun whispered. "Look at the size of that thing. Incoming transmission," their communications officer announced. "It's from the planet." The view screen flickered to life, showing a being that looked almost human except for the silver skin and for arms, the aliens. Large eyes were filled with desperate hope. "Human ship, this is First Speaker Veloran of the Kethra. We cannot believe you came. The Galactic Council told us no rescue was possible. Well, The Galactic Council doesn't know humans very well, Soman replied. How many people do we need to evacuate? 8 million survivors in our capital city. But our transport ships can only carry 50,000. The rest, Valoran's voice broke. The rest will die with our world. Double quotes 8 million. The number hit the human crew like a physical blow. The Phoenix 7 could maybe carry 2,000 people if they packed them in light cargo. Even if they made multiple trips, with their damaged ship probably couldn't survive. They'd save less than 20,000. But Soman had spent her entire career solving impossible problems, Hyun. What's the biggest structure we can transport? With our gravity tethers, the scientist's eyes widened as she understood. Theoretically, maybe a small building. But, Captain, you are not thinking. I'm thinking that if we can't bring the people to the ship, we bring the ship to the people. How big are your transport vessels? She asked Veloran. Our largest cargo haulers are 1,200 meters long, but they're not designed for interstellar travel. They have no FTL capability. They don't need FTL capability if we're doing the flying. Soman turned to her crew. We're going to strap those cargo ships to our hull and drag them through null space. Dongyan stared at her. Captain, that's completely insane. The stress of an FTL jump with that much extra mass could tear our ship apart. Could, Soman emphasized, but it might not, and if it doesn't, we save 8 million lives instead of 2,000. The next 18 hours were a blur of desperate activity. The Phoenix 7 descended into the Kethra atmosphere, its hull glowing red-hot from atmospheric entry. The planet below was in chaos. Massive earthquakes shook the ground as their dying sun's gravity pulled at the world's core. Volcanic eruptions painted the sky orange, and the oceans boiled with superheated steam. But the Kethra people were not giving up. As soon as the human ship landed, thousands of aliens began loading onto their massive cargo vessels. These weren't sleek starships like the Phoenix 7. They were industrial workhorses, designed to haul raw materials between planets. Each one was basically a giant metal box with engines. This is never going to work, Hyun muttered as she watched. The Kethra engineers weld attachment points onto the cargo ships' hulls. The Phoenix 7 wasn't designed to tow anything, let alone 5 ships each bigger than a city block. Then we'll have to redesign it, Soman said, fast. What followed was the most ambitious engineering project in human history, completed in less than a day. The Kethra had technology that could manipulate gravity and energy fields that humans were only beginning to understand. Working together, they created a tether system that linked the cargo ships to the Phoenix 7 through quantum entanglement, instead of physical cables that would snap under the stress of FTL travel. They used quantum bonds that would keep the ships connected even when they existed in different dimensions. It was theoretical physics applied on a massive scale. With no time for testing, the stellar monitors show cascade failure beginning. Valoran reported from the lead cargo ship. We have perhaps 6 hours before the supernova. All around them, the planet was dying. The sky had turned black as ash clouds from 100 volcanoes blocked out the swollen sun. Lightning storms raged across the continents, and the ground shook constantly. But still the Kethra came, families carrying children, elderly aliens helped by younger ones, everyone moving with the calm dignity of a people who had accepted their fate but refused to surrender. Final count, 7,800,000 souls aboard the cargo vessels, the loading coordinator reported. We couldn't fit everyone. 200,000 people would die because there simply wasn't room. The weight of that decision settled on Captain Summon's shoulders like a physical burden, but 7,800,000 was better than 8 million. All ships, prepare for emergency FTL jump, she announced. Dongyun, I hope you're feeling lucky. Always, Captain. Though I should mention that our navigation computer is still dead. We're flying this by instinct and prayer. Good thing humans excel at both. The Phoenix 7's engines roared to life, energy crackling along the quantum tethers connecting them to the massive cargo ships. The combined mass of all 6 vessels was more than any ship had ever attempted to drag through. Null space according to every known law of physics, they should have been ripped apart the moment they entered FTL. But humans had never been very good at following the laws of physics. The ships vanished from normal space just as the Kethra sun began its final collapse. Behind them, a world died in nuclear fire. Ahead of them, the impossible journey home began. In the space between dimensions, where reality worked differently. 6 ships held together by quantum bonds and human stubbornness carried the last survivors of an ancient civilization towards safety. The Galactic Council's monitoring stations detected the massive energy signature moving through null space at speeds that should have been impossible. The humans succeeded. The Sultry representative observed, its voice filled with something. That might have been impossible. The Crystal Hegemony delegate responded. Our calculations showed total mission failure. Perhaps, the Iron Confederate added slowly. Our calculations did not account for the human variable. The Phoenix 7 limped back into Earth's solar system 3 days later. Its hull scarred and blackened from the impossible journey. The 6 ships looked like they'd been through a war, held together by quantum tethers and sheer willpower. But they were intact, and inside the massive Kethra cargo vessels. Nearly 8 million alien refugees prepared to see their new home. Earth Control. This is Phoenix 7. Captain Summon's voice crackled over the communications ray. We're coming in hot with some passengers. The response from Earth was immediate and chaotic. Every major news network, government official, and scientific organization wanted to be the first to welcome humanity's newest allies. But it was Admiral Chen's voice that came through clearest. Phoenix 7. You magnificent bastards. The whole galaxy is watching. We've got diplomatic ships from 40 different species requesting permission to enter our system. Apparently, word of your little rescue mission has spread through the viewports. They could see ships unlike anything in Earth's databases, sleek sultry cruisers that looked like living metal. Crystal hegemony vessels that sparkled like cut diamonds and massive. Iron Fleet dreadnoughts bristling with weapons. All of them had come to witness something that the Galactic Council had declared impossible. First Speaker Valoran, Somin called to the lead cargo ship. Welcome to the Source System. That blue-green world ahead of you is Earth. You're a new home. The response from the Kethra leader was filled with emotion. Captain Somin, we owe humanity a debt that can never be repaid. You did what the galaxy's greatest civilization said could not be done. As the ships approached Earth, something unexpected happened. The alien vessels that had come to observe began transmitting messages, not to Earth's governments or military command, but directly to the Phoenix 7, human vessel. Came the voice of the Sultry representative who had dismissed their mission as impossible. The Sultry Empire formally requests to establish diplomatic relations with humanity. Your actions have demonstrated capabilities that exceed our mathematical models. The Crystal Hegemony delegate followed. The rescue of the Kethra using experimental technology shows innovation beyond our experience. We wish to learn from your methods. Even the mechanical voice of the Iron Fleet Confederate carried something like respect, resource. Expenditure. Calculations require updating. Human approach to impossible scenarios proves effective. Request permission to study your tactical methodologies. Captain Soman looked round at her crew. Dong-Yan was grinning like he'd just won the galactic lottery. Hyun was frantically taking notes on her tablet. recording every alien transmission for later analysis. The rest of the crew wore expressions of amazed disbelief. "You realize what this means?" Ayun said quietly. "We just went from being an unknown species on the edge of nowhere to having 40 different civilizations wanting to be our friends. But the real celebration began when they reached Earth orbit, the Kethra refugees. Seeing their new world for the first time began what could only be described as the most beautiful sound any human had ever heard. 8 million voices singing together. A song of gratitude that resonated through the quantum communications ray and reached every ship in the system. "What are they singing?" Dongyan asked. First speaker Valoran's translation came through the speakers. "It is the song of new dawn. We sing it when our people find safety after great danger. But we have never sung it for another species before. You have given us not just life, but hope." Over the following weeks, Earth transformed. The Kethra refugees were settled on Mars, which their advanced terraforming technology quickly made more habitable than it had been in millions of years. In exchange, they shared knowledge that advanced human science by centuries, faster than light communication, gravity manipulation, energy shields that could protect entire planets. But more importantly, they brought news of the wider galaxy. Humanity learned they were part of a cosmic community containing thousands of species, most of whom had grown comfortable with the idea that some problems were simply too difficult to solve. "That's where you're different," First Speaker Valoran explained during a joint session of the United Nations and the newly formed Galactic Council Earth chapter. "The other species calculate acceptable losses. They determine what is possible. Before they begin, you attempt impossible things because you believe they can be done." The Kethra weren't the only ones taking notice. Within months of the rescue, Earth received formal invitations to join dozens of galactic organizations, the Interstellar Trade Federation, the Cosmic Science Consortium, the Galactic Defense Alliance. Every major power wanted humanity as an ally. "It's remarkable," Admiral Chen observed during a strategy meeting. 6 months ago, we didn't even know aliens existed. Now we're being recruited by every major galactic power. But the most significant change was philosophical. The rescue of the Kethra had done something that thousands of years of galactic civilization hadn't accomplished. It had inspired other species to attempt their own impossible missions. The Zoltri launched their first experimental faster-than-light exploration program in centuries, using principles adapted from the Phoenix 7's null space drive. The Crystal Hegemony began developing new technologies specifically designed for emergency rescue operations. Even the calculating Iron Fleet started factoring human variables into their mission planning. You have changed how the galaxy thinks," the Council's senior diplomatic officer, ancient being called the Eternal Observer, told Captain Soman during the formal ceremony recognizing humanity as a full galactic citizen. "For millennia, we have grown cautious, calculating, safe. You have reminded us that sometimes the greatest achievements require the greatest risks." Captain Soman stood before the assembled representatives of 40 different species, still wearing her flight uniform because she'd refused the formal diplomatic robes they'd offered. "We didn't do anything special. We just saw people who needed help and decided to help them. That," the Eternal Observer replied, "is exactly what made it special." The ceremony concluded with the signing of the Terror Accords, formally recognizing Earth as humanity's sovereign territory and admitting humans to the Galactic Council with full voting rights. But the real celebration was smaller, more personal on Mars. In the capital city that the Kethra had built using their gravity-shaping technology, Captain Soman and her crew were given the highest honor their new allies could bestow. They were adopted into the Kethra family, making them the first humans to become citizens of 2 different species. "You saved us," First Speaker Valoran said during the private ceremony. But more than that, you proved that impossible is just another word for things nobody has tried hard enough to achieve, as Soman looked out at the red Martian landscape, now dotted with gleaming Kethra cities and bustling with activity from dozens of different species. She realized they'd accomplished something bigger than just a rescue mission. They'd proven that humanity belonged among the stars. The galaxy had spent thousands of years believing that some problems were too big, too distant, too dangerous to solve. It took a species young enough to still believe in the impossible to prove them wrong. What others called impossible, humans called Tuesday. And the galaxy would never be the same. The end.